Delighted to say now we're joined by John Fenton, Cork and Midleton legend. John, great to have you on the show. How are things with you?
Good, thanks, Shane. Very good, thank you. And yourself?
I'm not too bad at all. Delighted to get you on the show. I might get you to just slightly nudge the camera the other way if you can. There we have you now. We have you. So obviously Midleton are going to be playing this weekend in the Munster Club Championship against Kilmallock. Going to be a great clash, I would imagine. I was just thinking of your own days playing in the Munster Club Championship, and I think I was only a baby in 1983. I'm sure the mother had me there in her arms. I'd say the father was preoccupied watching the match. But can you reminisce on those days? Because funnily enough, that was in Kilmallock too. And I was just looking at some grainy footage of it. But winning that game against Borrisoleigh after a replay.
Yeah, we won the Cork County Championship in 1983. And we went on then to play in the Munster Championship after that. And we were really on a high after winning the Cork County Championship. And we took it very seriously, as we have anytime we've been in the competition since. We've always taken the Munster Club Championship very seriously. 1983, I think our first game after that was down in Mount Sion, and it was really a kind of a journey into the unknown, because we hadn't seen, while we had played teams in challenge games outside of our county, and there was nothing like a competitive fixture to really test to see how good we were. So, like, we won that, and then we qualified to play Borrisoleigh in the club final in 83. Both games were played in Kilmallock. I think the attendance in both games was around 7,000, 6,000 or 7,000 for both games. And there were two crackers of matches. We were, the first day, both days really, I suppose, we were hanging on by our fingertips, because the Borrisoleigh team at the time were a star-studded team. Well versed in inter-county level, whereas at the time we probably had only maybe Kevin Hennessy, Dennis Mulcahy, and myself maybe that had played at a fairly regular level at inter-county level at the time. But like the first day, I think we could thank Kevin Hennessy and our goalkeeper Job Power. I think Kevin scored 3-3 the first day, and Job Power pulled off some wonder saves. And then the second day, again, it was the same type of game. Borrisoleigh were on top, and actually there was a video of that game, and there was a lad from Borrisoleigh rang me, I suppose, about 10 years ago, asking me to know would I have a copy of that, because it was only then that he could bring himself to look at the game about 20 years after it was played. So, yeah, like with 5 minutes to go, less, I suppose, about 3 minutes to go, we were 2 points down. And we got a free, and Borrisoleigh cornerback held on to the ball too long. He wanted to take it home with him. Actually, he wouldn't give it to us at all. So the referee gave a free in, and we were 2 points down to just an ordinary 21-yard straight. I remember looking over at the sideline. I was a selector as well as being captain, and there was 4 other selectors, and there was 2 lads on the line. I don't know where the other 2 were gone. But I just looked over for a bit of guidance, and one guy had his finger up saying goal for a point, and the other one had his finger down saying go for a goal. And I can remember saying to myself, "Jeez, you're on your own here." And so, look, I went for the goal and I got it. And the next 2 puck outs, we won them, and we got 2 frees, and we eventually won by a couple of points. So, but there were 2 fabulous games. Borrisoleigh wouldn't probably think that, but there were 2 marvelous games of hurling. Like, so, it was definitely one that they slipped away, but it was one, I think, by our enthusiasm and our skill and the tenacity that was there. We had to match. We knew we had to match Borrisoleigh in those sectors, and I think we did. There was a YouTube video of it came out there sometime last year, and I watched parts of it. And if some of the tackles happen now that happened then, I don't know, would there be yellow cards issued? Would there be Garda escort to them to the nearest jail on both sides? So it was, let's just say, it was a very competitive 2 matches. But look, we have great memories for it. Borrisoleigh went on to win an All-Ireland club before we did afterwards. And no, there were great times, great competition.
And what was it like? Because like when I look at that, you see the fence around the pitch. It just looks like you know, that everyone was on top of you. It must have been a claustrophobic sort of environment. And I say that in a good, exciting sort of a way. Like, what was that like? And do you have memories of the final whistle that day?
Yes, I do. Like it was fantastic, and I think it's the one feature of the Munster Club Championship in the last couple of years that I disagree with, because we played all our games that time on a home and away basis. We'll go to Limerick next Sunday, and you're going to have in Gaelic grounds a couple of thousand people in an empty stadium. Like those days, the crowd were all around us. You could feel and hear the tension, and like obviously Midleton people were delighted after the final whistle, but yeah, like I think where possible they should go back to club grounds again.
Yeah. And just for you, who were the sort of men driving the team? Obviously, the current manager of the Midleton team, Gerard Fitzgerald, he's I'm sure he's one of the key men. But who kind of drove you over the line?
Well, that time I suppose. Like we've had great selectors and people that were involved at the time, but I think a lot of it, as is happening with the current team, I think a lot of it is player led, and we knew in the last couple of years that the ability was there. We played in the county final 3 years ago, and we were well beaten by McKilly, who had a star-studded team. They're a divisional team in our own division, and so like we knew at the time, like that we had the ability to go on, and we wanted to test ourselves, and we did. And like what was there at the time, there was a tremendous self-discipline, there was a tremendous drive to emulate. Now I know we were beaten in the semi-final of the All-Ireland Club afterwards, but like that was a stepping stone. Then we won counties then in 86 and 87, and in 87 we said we played Cap and White actually in the Munster final in 87 again in Kilmallock, and we won that one by a point. And those games brought us on tremendously and gave us a tremendous, I suppose, ability and belief in our own ability that we were capable of going on and winning an All-Ireland, which we did, thankfully, on Patrick's Day in 1988.
Just on that, John, winning the Club All-Ireland, where does that rank with the All-Irelands that you won with Cork? How would you compare them? Which would there have been more satisfaction in the club or county, or which? And how great was it to go and win in Croke Park with your club?
Well, I always say that, and I can still remember the date, the 9th of October 1983 was the greatest day of my sporting life when Midleton won the county. The 5th of December 1983 when we beat Borrisoleigh to win the Munster Club was probably the second. And then, like, to cap it all, then, like, look, I was very privileged to play in Croke Park with Cork. I captained Cork in the All-Ireland final. They were great memories. But if I'm asked what was the greatest day of my sporting life, 9th of October 1983 when we won the county for the first time in 67 years. So, you know, like, that was a tremendous experience, and it's one that I'll take to the grave with me.
Just on that, John, your recall and memory of the games, the details of them, and even the dates is unbelievable. Really, you talk to some fellas and they wouldn't remember anything about a game. Is that just from thinking back about the games regularly, having regular conversations with people about the games, or people telling you about the games, or was that just the way you always were, that you remembered these little things that happened in games and dates and things like that? Are you a bit of a memory man down in Cork? Are you?
Absolutely not. I can't tell you what happened yesterday. But those two, particularly the first county in 83, left such an impression. You'd have to be around Midleton the week coming up to that. The buzz that was there. The Bars had beaten us 4 years in the semi-final of the county championship. We were playing them in 83 for the first time, for the 5th time in a row. 5 years earlier, 1978, we were a very poor intermediate team. We won an intermediate championship in Cork with an average age of the team of about 19, I think. Kevin Hennessy was only 17 playing in wing back. We'd 5 or 6 minors on the team that day. So, like, where we had come from 78 to 83 was astronomical in terms of progress. So, like, the buzz, the Bars had beaten us 4 years in the semi-final, but there was never more than the puck of the ball between us and any one time. And, like, the buzz coming up to that in 1983 was incredible. You could feel it around the town. You could feel the excitement there, the thrill that was there. And like, it left such an impression on me. It was such, we achieved something that we never thought we ever would or we ever could. And that's what the memories are. Like, don't ask me any more dates or any more figures because I can't remember them. But I can remember those. Like, so.
John, I'm just looking at some of the key players for that Bars team that held you back for so long. I mean, obviously Jimmy Barry is the one that jumps off the page, but even before that, Charlie McCarthy, Gerald McCarthy, Gerard Cunningham, so on and so forth.
Oh, yeah.
That rivalry you would have had and losing from 4 years in a row. How did that? What was that like? And then having to share a dressing room.
But my battery is just telling me this is running low. So bear with me for 2 seconds while I get a cable and I'll plug it in. I'll be back to you in 2 seconds.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah, Michael, we might as well just finish off chatting about Crokes against Clock Balacalla there. Great to have John on, and he'll be back in a second, folks. But are you ruling out an opportunity for Clock Balacalla to win here? Like, I think if Picky Maher is held down, they're going to find it very, very hard to win this game.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you there as well. Willie Dunphy was probably quiet the last day. They're going to need...
I think he got married in the meantime too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because they were saying they weren't sure whether he was going to go off to Vegas or where he was going to go on honeymoon or whether he was going to be around for the next game. But I'm sure he'll be around. But he's going to need to have one of those typical Willie Dunphy, 4 or 5 point games, for Clock Balacalla to be winning here. But I really think Crokes are kind of a slick, kind of well-oiled machine. And I think they'll go about their business fairly professionally. I think it could be competitive for 40, 45 minutes, but I would definitely see Crokes pulling away, and I'd see them winning by 5 or 6 in the wind-up, if I'm honest. I'd gladly be proven wrong by our near neighbours in Laois, but I think Crokes, if anybody's going to beat Ballyhale and Leinster, it'll be Kilmacud.
Yeah, they've a young athletic team, Crokes, so I'd just be giving them the nod there. I think, John, you're back, ready to hurl with us again. So the question I was going to ask you is, what was it like sharing a dressing room with, the likes of Jimmy Barry and all these great players that are just kind of named, and then you have to go and you're trying to win stuff with them with Cork, and you're trying to beat them then at the other side. Was there a sort of an undercurrent of a club rivalry there?
Absolutely not. And I could say that without any fear of doubt or whatever. We played the Bars. We played them for 5 years, as I say. And the minute you went into the Cork dressing room at the time, and I hope it still is there, once you went into the Cork dressing room, didn't matter what club you were from, didn't matter what games were played, you were a Cork player, and that was it. We learned from these lads. The Bars at the time had a fantastic team. They were winning all Ireland clubs, and they would constitute an awful lot of the Cork senior panel at the time. And when you consider the team, the county final of 1983, 11 of the players that played that day were made up the Cork panel for the following year, 1984. So of the 2 teams that played in the county final in 83, more than half the panel came from those 2 teams. And that's something which has changed in Cork, unfortunately, over the last 10 years. But at the time, you would have had the Glen, the Bars, and Blackrock. They were the trendsetters, and not alone were they winning counties, but as I said, they were going on to win all Ireland Munster championships and all Ireland clubs. So that's the level that we had to attain. And but again, repeating myself, once you went into a Cork dressing room, you were a Cork player, and that was it.
Just on that, Shane, as well, just looking back through the Munster Roll of Honour, and you just see from 71 to 78, it was won by Cork teams every year who all went on to win the All-Ireland. Blackrock in 81, the Rovers in 72, the Rockies 73, the Bars 74, the Rockies 75, Glen in 76, the Bars in 77, and Blackrock in 78. Like that's an unbelievable, it's an unbelievable standard to be playing to. And just on that, John, the Cork have probably struggled at provincial level, provincial club level in Munster. Is that something that you think is a big motivation for the current Midleton crew?
Without a doubt, and it's one of the factors why I think we haven't been as successful at intercounty level as what we were in that period in the 70s, the 80s, because we had an undercurrent of players and teams that were used to playing at that level, that were used to playing all year round, that were used to playing top class opposition. And over the last couple of years at county final level, if we had 2 or 3 players that subsequently played with the county team afterwards, it was a lot. But again, going into next Sunday's game, we are fired up with this in the sense that, as I say, we always took great pride and took great interest in the championship. We have a young team, a little bit like 1983. They're very young. They're very committed. We know we're up against it, but look, we'll go up there and we'll put up as good a show as we possibly can. We're going up to win it. And a couple of years ago, when we were last in the county final, we were beaten by McKilly. McKilly couldn't enter the competition because they're a divisional team. We went down, we played Ballygunner. And I think two things. Number one, we didn't give ourselves much of a chance going down. And number two, I think we had one or two chances to win the game. And with Ballygunner, we're hot favourites to win it. And unfortunately for us on the day, we didn't do it. But we have a chance now next Sunday to further our interest in the competition.
How impressed were you by Midleton in the county final, beating Glen Rovers 24 points to 118? Conor Lahan, the standout player there, scoring 13 of those, 5 of them from play. But, you know, Cormac Boasang, he got a few. Luca O'Farrell, he got just one, but he's been very good from what I've seen this year. So were you very impressed by the team? I
was, actually. I be very honest with you, I'd missed the two previous games because I was out of the country, and I'd watched them on the link, and but it's not the same as being there. But for the county final, I went up to the top of the New North stand, and I was on my own and just looked at the game, and I was very, very impressed with the way we played and with the type of hurling that we tried to play. I think we were the better team on the day. The Glen had a chance, the last puck of the game, literally the last puck of the game, to level the game, but I think it would have been injustice that happened. But look, we learned a hard lesson in the sense that we learned a great lesson in the sense that we now know that the game isn't over until the final whistle, win or lose. And like that happened to us 3 years ago against Ballygunner. We didn't take our chances and we had the chance to win it. So like I was impressed with the lads. With COVID and everything now in the last couple of weeks, you know, restrictions on training, but they have put in an effort, and I think they will go up on Sunday full of enthusiasm for the game and for the competition.
We're hoping for an absolute cracker there. So a question about Cork. I mean, you know, you won 5 All-Stars in a row yourself, which was incredible going back in the day. No All-Stars for Cork this year, despite getting to the All-Ireland final. Were you surprised with that?
Was I surprised at that? I suppose it's very, very unusual that when a team gets to an All-Ireland final, I don't think it has ever happened. I can never recall it happening in my memory where a losing team in an All-Ireland final would not have some representation on the team. The fact that Limerick have 12 on the team probably shows their dominance. And I think there might be one or two Cork lads might be disappointed that they didn't get a nod. But I suppose in all fairness, like it just proves how good Limerick have been over the year and over the last couple of years. And well, I think it'll motivate a lot of the Cork fellas for next year to go one step further.
That's what I was just going to ask you, John. Do you think a lot of lads will have that maybe stuck in their craw a bit of disappointment, and it might drive them on to even better in 2022?
Well, an All-Star trophy to me is a fantastic honour. It's a great. A lovely boost to get at the end of the year. Okay, if you had a choice between an All-Star and an All-Ireland medal, you would obviously take the All-Ireland medal. But I think, you know, like Limerick are going to be there for not alone for Cork, but for everybody else to try and achieve the same level of playing and consistency that they have. And I think it'll motivate an awful lot of teams next year to up their game against them. Whether we'll be good enough or not, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
And John, Seanie O'Leary, obviously your old teammate, he passed away recently. Can you just talk to us about Seanie O'Leary? I mean, a brilliant player who tormented so many teams. I think of the time that he scored the late goals against Borrisoleigh. Obviously, he got his busted nose and Christy Ring told him to play. But can you just talk to us a little bit about Seanie O'Leary?
Well, I suppose I was very privileged to know Seanie and to play with him. He lived in Midleton for a lot of his life, so I'd know him from around the town and from going to matches, travelling to matches. A lot of those times we used to travel to matches in cars, and Seanie would often be in the same car as what we would have. He was a fantastic player, and Seanie's modus operandi was to hang around the square as often as he could, and like in the last week, there's been clips showing the goal against Tipperary in the centenary final and the 2 goals that he got against Offaly. And like they were within the parallelogram. So And I always remember he was chastising the likes of Kevin Hennessy and Tomas Mulcahy, who'd be running around all over the field and enthusiastic and trying to get their hands on the ball and whatever. But Seanie would be calling back, and he'd say to them, lads, there's inside here, you'll score your goals. And he proved that. And Seanie was the fierce nice guy, very witty guy, fierce committed, was probably part of the greatest ever Cork full forward line with Charlie McCarthy, Ray Cummins and himself. They were absolutely lethal. They loved scoring goals. And Seanie, I think, mastered the art of maximum outcome with minimum effort. And like in training, we were only talking about it during the week. Sprints in and out of 14, he'd beat anybody. But ask him to run the lap of the field, and you might as well get a bus for him halfway down, because he wouldn't do it. So, but he was a great character, lovely player, great finisher, and you can see it actually on the messages on the condolences on RIP, how much respected he was from hurling people from all over the country. Galway, Tipperary, Antrim, Wexford, all over the place. Kilkenny, they just say what a great player he was. And I think that will be some comfort to his wife and to his family, that he was so much admired and respected for what he did on the field and off the field. But most people would have known him from his efforts on the field.
And just even to talk more broadly about that Cork team you had, and as a Tipperary person, you battered Tipperary, terrorised Tipperary for years. I'd say you barely ever lost a game to Tipperary at all. What was it that made you so good?
Well, that's only repaying for what happened to Cork people in the 60s when Tipperary were doing the same to us. I have a very close neighbour here, and he's actually involved with our senior team now. He looks after the slitters and the gear and everything like that. And he said he was actually terrorised by that Tipperary team when he was growing up as a young fella in the 60s. And it left a traumatic effect on him. But what we had at the time, again, we were fierce lucky with a good bunch of players, just like the Midleton team, a good bunch of players that were very committed, very dedicated. And they came through a system, a bit like Limerick going back a few years ago when Arskell Rees came on board and they started winning Hartleys and winning All-Ireland clubs. A lot of our lads went to Fan Ferris and they went to the Man. And they would have been used to playing together. And even though there might have been different clubs, like those schools, St. Coleman's was another one. Like there were three schools that were really at the core of Cork teams. A lot of if you wanted to get on the Cork minors and you were in these schools, you had an advantage over an awful lot of other players because you were playing at a high level all the time, year in, year out. And but we had some great players on that team. And as I said to you earlier, once you went into that Cork dressing room, irrespective of what happened, what club you were from, whether you were from the smallest junior club to the biggest senior club, we were all equals. And there was no issue about that. And we had a tremendous crack, and you hear a lot about it at the moment, about the fun going out of the game and players aren't enjoying it. But we loved it. We enjoyed it. Like training was going to training. You love going to training because some fella would hop a ball someplace and then somebody else would take it up. And again, nobody was sacred. Nobody was sacrosanct. If you were in the firing line, you were in it and you took it. And you either gave it back or you shut up and moved on and got out of the dressing room as fast as you could. But apart from that, like it was just a pure joy of meeting these lads. And we met last week now for Guard of Honour for Seanie. And there was no, it was just as if we had come in from a training session. Everybody just met, talked as if we were there all our lives, which we had been.
Can I just ask you about, you played with such brilliant players. Who were the naturally most talented players that you kind of played with? Or did anyone ever do that and then you thought to yourself, oh my God, the skill of this guy?
Well, I always say, I was lucky. I had two players, I suppose, Gerald McCarthy, when I was growing up. Gerald and Tom Cashman were the two most gifted, wristy players that I have ever seen. Now, the likes of Joe Canning and DJ Carey afterwards would emulate them in terms of what they could do. But when you see lads doing things in training that would never happen in a game, or might never happen in a game, but you'd see the wrist work and the craft that they had. I think they were the two standout players in terms of wrist work and craft and pure hurling skill that I came across in my Cork team down through the years.
It's funny, Shane. I'd say if you ask them who done things that they thought they'd never see, they'd probably mention John, and they'd probably mention that goal, John, against Limerick in '87, which I'm sure is said to you over and over again. It was such a remarkable piece of skill. Can you just talk me through it? I remember, I think it was Tomas Mulcahy was out further than he'd normally be out the pitch and kind of lay the ball on for you. Can you just talk me through it, or what are your memories of it?
Well, I suppose, number one, I've probably met everybody that was at that game by now, because I don't know how many people said that they were at the game. And like our modus operandi of hurling at the time was, when we go training, we had a coach, Canon Bertie Try, was there in the Trina Roar years, and then he was succeeded by the likes of Justin McCarthy, Johnny Clifford, Canon Michael O'Brien, and they were all cut off the same cloth in terms of the way the hurling should be played. And our first thing was, when we go hurling training in Cork, there could be a dozen or 15 balls thrown out on the ground. And we were told that none of those balls were to stop for the next 20 minutes. And that's what we spent our first 20 minutes doing in most training sessions, just hitting the ball on the ground. And left and right, you hit the ball whichever way it is coming, you kept it going. So, like, Ray Cummins and Charlie, and when they were playing, and Shawnee, when they were playing the full forward, the ball that they wanted was a hard, fast, low ball. You don't, not like today's corner forwards where you have to put it on the plate for them. These guys were prepared to forage and run and fight for the ball. And like, all they wanted was, Ray Cummins was one of the tallest players ever. But if you hit a high ball into Ray, he'd give out like hell to you. What he wanted was a ball into his chest where he could go out and catch it head height or chest height in front of the player that was marking him. So, like, that shot in 1987, I can recall it in the sense that I remember Limerick had gone up, got a point, and I remember saying to myself, we must get up and get a score before half-time to match that. And Cullion took the puck out, and there was a melee of players. As I say, Tomas was there. He didn't know what he was doing out there because he was so far from his comfort zone. No, he doesn't know what he was doing out there. So he couldn't control the ball where it was. He kind of pushed it out of the melee. I was coming up, pushed it past the group of players. And in my mind's eye, I could see a red jersey in front of the goals. And I didn't know who it was. But in the peripheral vision, that was there. And that was the target, just hit it. And look, it just took off. And it ended up going into the back of the net. But like, I met somebody afterwards, Damien Irwin, who played with Cork. And he said to me, John, you hit so many balls on the ground, you were bound to get one right. So, but like that was the way. Like, I would have hit 100 of those balls at any one night in training. So like that one, as I say, ended up in the back of the net. So.
I have to ask you, John, about I have to ask you whether it was a delivery or whether it was a shot in '83 against Galway. What were you thinking when you picked up that ball? I know Jimmy Barry flicked it in. Is so quick that nearly nobody saw it, and it was barely caught on camera. What were you thinking when you had the ball in hand? Were you going for a score? Were you going for a point? Were you going for a goal? Were you delivering it?
No, that was a delivery into Jimmy Barry, because again, as I said to you, it was what we were conditioned to do. The likes of Ray Cummins, Jimmy Barry inside, they wanted the ball in front of them. And when I got that ball in the centre of the field, my target was Jimmy Barry at the time, and it was in just above shoulder height. He didn't go to catch it. He had Conor Hayes on his back. Jimmy pulled on it, flicked it, and it ended up in the back of the net. Could
you believe that, like, when you saw it happen, were you like, did he actually just manage to connect with that and score a goal?
Well, I did, because I knew the trajectory. I was following the flight of the ball, and I knew the trajectory of the ball had taken a lift. So I knew somebody had hit it or had connected with it. So I presume Conor Hayes wasn't going to put it into his own goal. So I gave Jimmy Barry the benefit of the doubt at the time.
And do you see Cork getting back to the top of the tree? I mean, we know how dominant Limerick are, so they're going to be challenging. or sorry, a huge impediment for anybody. But do you see Cork getting back to the top anytime soon?
Well, a couple of years ago, we played Limerick and we were 6 points up with a few minutes to go. And like we had the chance to win that. We were in the All-Ireland final last year. We were competing well in Munster, Limerick aside. But like we did beat Limerick 2 years ago. So like we're not that far off it. I think what Limerick have now is they have a strength in depth, they have a belief. Like you could see today, 12 All-Stars, you could argue to toughen the 3 guys that were left out because they had some team as well. And I'm sure it was just pure politics that the whole 15 of them weren't picked. And but it'd be difficult. I think we're a bit reliant on Patrick Horgan over the last couple of years. I don't know what age is Patrick. He's pushing up on 34, 35. So like he's not going to be able to run around like a spring chicken much longer. He'll hit the freeze. We need forwards. Unfortunately, I think this year our 4 semi-finalists at senior level, I think there was only 6 players from those 4 clubs on the Cork panel. And like with COVID now in the last couple of years, they're not getting the exposure at colleges level, at UCC level. I think we might be a couple of years shy yet of toppling Limerick. And
John, just one question before I let you go. What is it about the game of hurling that made you fall in love with it?
Well, I suppose I was lucky in the sense my father was very much involved in the game. He was with a local club here, Carrigtwohill, and they had a great team in the 50s, the likes of Willie John Daly, Matty Foohey, Sean Toomey, all these guys. And they very nearly came to rattle. They rattled the Glen a few times, but they never got over the line in terms of winning the county outright. And I suppose, look, my uncles played on my mother's side. And when you were growing up in a place like Cork, I think Ben O'Connor was quoted there in the paper after our county final when he was asked to come down. He did a bit of research before he actually came to Midleton. And the one comment he made, he says, they're hurling mad down there. And that's what we are. And like at the time, I suppose I was lucky when I was growing up. Cork had a fallow period with that Tipperary team being so strong in the 50s. Like one of my greatest memories is actually the cup coming to our school in 1966 with Paddy Fitzgerald, who's father of Gerald Fitzgerald, who's our current manager and who played against Borrisolee in 83. And like that enkindled in me some kind of, I suppose, love for the game, grow for the game, whatever it is. And yeah, look, I've had a hurley in my hands since I can remember. And yeah, they were great days. And I'd love to be back there again and starting all over.
Sorry, one further question. Did you see Christy Ring play when you were a child, or had he wound up a little bit at that stage?
Yeah, I saw Christy a few times, maybe 3 or 4 times I can recall seeing him. But realistically, look, Christy was in his 40s, well into his 40s at that age. So no, I did. The aura of Christy Ring was and still is there. And like he came from Clyne, he played hurling with Midleton. He won a county minor hurling medal with Midleton, and before he went on to Glen Rovers. So yeah, like the opening of our field in 1962, I was 7. He played against the Limerick team that day, and I remember seeing him. I think I was actually at his last game for the Glen, and but yeah, like I remember seeing Christy play. Yeah.
There's plenty of positive comments in for you here, John, just before we let you go. Billy Hedigan says, John Fenton was a super hurler for Cork. His style and technique always stood out from the rest. His great goal against Limerick is only a snippet of what he could do with a ball. Joe Butler says, John Fenton, a pure genius and a delight to watch. That was some goal, but he had an abundance of skill in all areas of the game. And EH says, great interview. So plenty of good comments coming in for you there, John. And we're absolutely delighted you could join us on the show.
I hope the Kilmallock fellas now will take note of that and go easy on us next Sunday.
Absolutely. Well, look, John, absolutely brilliant to have you on. Really, really appreciate it. And best of luck with everything.
Okay, lads. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/ourgame.